Lefty. Slim. Quiet Steve. Sweet Jesus, what the hell was that? It sounds like something's attacking the cattle. I reckon. Well, I think we should go out there and check it out. I'm not going out there. You're a yellow-bellied coward, Lefty. I reckon. But I'm not gonna be dead in the next 15 minutes either. You've got a fair point there. Welcome again to Reviews from Purgatory with J. Matt Wigand. And I should probably do this whole review in a Western accent or my crappy approximation thereof. When I heard about this movie, a horror Western, I had to see it for myself. Why? Because the horror genre is horribly cliched. This film does avoid a lot of the usual cliches, but that doesn't make it a good movie. The story of Burrowers is set in 1869 in August in the Dakota Territories. As such, I'm sure that a historian very familiar with the era could tear it apart for any number of reasons. Out of my hatred for this movie, or at least strong dislike, I did really try to find historical inaccuracies so I could tear apart the movie, but I couldn't find any. The film is about believing that Native Americans are responsible for disappearances and killings, and then learning that the true culprits are monsters. I suppose I could point out the obvious and say that there were never monsters on the Great Plains that used to hunt buffalo and then people, but, you know, that would just be douchey of me to bring up. I mean, obviously the basic premise is not historically accurate, but who cares? However, I challenge their use of the Wilhelm scream. The infamous sound effect that has appeared in hundreds of movies doesn't quite fit here. Could I count that as historically inaccurate? You know, after all, that's the scream of a sissy white guy, not the scream of a proud Native American warrior. Sounds like some kind of stand-up bit. White guys scream like. Black guys scream like. And Native Americans scream like. Predator, the best source for racially diverse screams. Racially diverse screams. I sure am avoiding talking about the plot here. I wonder if that's a bad sign. At the beginning, there are some attacks upon some homesteads, and some people are found dead, other people are missing. Our central protagonist is one Fergus Coffey, an Irish immigrant to the States, who is looking for his missing fiancée, Marianne Stewart. John Clay and William Parcher are longtime friends who have previous experience fighting the Indians, and it's believed that the Native Americans attacked these homesteads and abducted the people and murdered some. Shoot, I sound really excited by this story. Mr. Parcher brings along the son of the woman he is seeing, one Dobie Spax. That's the name of the boy, not the woman he's seeing, just to be clear. And along the way they encounter one cavalry captain, Henry Victor. His methods of getting information about where the missing settlers are brutal and ineffective, so they decide to break off and try to find information on their own. Along with them comes the cavalry captain's cook, one Walnut Callahan, a slave freed in the Civil War. Now, I've gone through all that boring setup just to show that there's a motley crew going out to find what happened to these missing settlers. The five of them find out that it's not the Native Americans attacking these people, but rather creatures native to the Great Plains that once fed upon the buffalo. But now that the buffalo have been killed by the white man, these monsters are eating the people. If you felt that summary was boring, Good. That's what I was shooting for. Now you truly understand the film. When I think of this film, I think of two others. Alien and John Carpenter's The Thing. Like Alien, this movie has a long, slow build-up. But while Alien's long, slow build-up was enjoyable, here it's just boring and grating to you as an audience member. Both Alien and The Thing built up to great third act climaxes. Here it feels like it took a long time to get nowhere. The final confrontation was extremely disappointing because of how brief it was, how it was too easy, and that the creatures were destroyed by sunlight. They even had to impale the creatures with sharpened wooden sticks to hold them in place for the sun. That brings me to a new segment here on Reviews from Purgatory. Bottom line, the film. It's a vampire movie set in the Old West. And if you want to see a vampire flick set in the Old West that's good, watch Dusk Till Dawn 3, Hangman's Daughter. That's a good film. Though it ain't a great movie, it at least ain't boring. It's got Breaking Bad's Bryan Cranston in it. I know how you all like Bryan Cranston. Getting back to my point about it being a disappointing final confrontation, there's no real sense of triumph. It's not because, well, they didn't really triumph. It's because it was just such a lackluster final fight. I had been comparing this film with Alien and The Thing, and those films have much better final confrontations. That could be because MacReady and Ripley had flamethrowers, but I really don't think that's it. It probably has something to do with the script not being as good, or the fact that you've got Sigourney Weaver as Ripley and Kurt Russell as MacReady versus Carl Geary as Fergus Coffey. Carl Geary being an okay actor and not having a lot to work with here means that he doesn't work so well as the central protagonist of this story. Nothing really jumps out at me from his filmography, though IMDb sure is making it clear that The Jungle Book is out on Blu-ray. He usually plays secondary characters and things in it, and according to Wikipedia, he was in Madonna's book Sex. That's just gotta be Wikipedia making stuff up as usual. I guess I could check using Google or something, but I really don't want to type that into a search box. Mr. Geary is supported by a stellar cast, including such greats as Sean Patrick Thomas, William Mapother, and Clancy Brown, but none of their characters are very interesting. Clancy Brown is always great in whatever he's in because he has such an incredible presence on the screen. However, he doesn't really have a lot of lines here. His job is mostly just to stand around looking stoic, being the strong silent type. It is nice to see Clancy Brown in a live-action role for a change, though. Last couple years, he's done mostly cartoon voices. I was beginning to forget what the hell he looked like. Sean Patrick Thomas, who's had a great career in movies and in television, gets to play my favorite character here, Walnut Callahan, former slave, now cook for the cavalry captain. His character does lots of kind or brave things, like give food to the tortured Native American, or leave the cavalry captain's service to help the main characters on their quest. I should bring up how well Fergus Coffey gets along with Walnut Callahan, because it shows how tolerant he is. They also both seem to despise the fact that there's this Native American being tortured in camp. They're sickened by it, yet later on, the main protagonist is taking pot shots when they first encounter the Sioux. He's the first to shoot, like some crazy guy. Completely out of character. I just figure it's a badly written piece of script and just shows why this protagonist doesn't work as well as MacReady or Ripley. William Mapother may have the most interesting character with Mr. Parcher there, given that he's got this woman he's seeing, he's wandering around with her stepson, got this Indian fighter past. has kind of the most interesting story arc in the movie, and it's a good role for him for a change, given that, his filmography is stuff like Bartender and Almost Famous, Scenes Deleted, or Club Goer, Vanilla Sky, Uncredited. His career is doing better, but, it is an amusing filmography to read. Because a lot of these characters here are named either things like Hotel Clerk, or they only have one name, like Wallace or something. By the way, you see how I put Jocelyn Donahue on the cast sheet? I really shouldn't have. I just wanted one woman on there, but I probably should have put the Native American woman on there, because Jocelyn Donahue's only in flashbacks and few scenes at the beginning. I should have put her on the poster instead. Newcomer Galen Hutchinson is okay. Hey, is it Sydney from Melrose Place playing his mom? Despite the last name, Galen Hutchison is not the son of other cast member Doug Hutchison. You may recognize him as the villain in a lot of things. Like when he was a child molester in A Time to Kill. Or an evil abusive corrections officer in The Green Mile. Sadistic torture droid Elroy L in Space Above and Beyond. Or as I like to remember him best as, that bile-covered naked guy who tried to kill Mulder. I think my point here is that Doug Hutchison plays villains, and plays villains pretty well. Henry Victor is a sadistic bastard and really the central villain of this piece. More so than the creatures, in all honesty. And maybe that's a problem. I've seen other horror movies with two villains in one way or another. Maybe there's just two killers. Maybe there's multiple evil things coming after people. It's the zombies and it's the military. Something like that. But it doesn't really work that well here. It feels like the creatures are secondary in the movie that's about them. Partially because, as I said, Henry Victor is really the central villain. Henry Victor and the cavalry. But also the Utes and the Sioux are kind of villains too. So really, the creatures are secondary in their own movie. And partially because, humanity brought it on themselves. This has kind of got a bit of a Ferngully type message. If Ferngully was about horrible forest creatures killing the loggers to prevent them from cutting down the rainforest. Yeah, it's not that great of a parallel. I guess the point I was reaching for is that both works say don't mess with nature, except while Ferngully's is because that's bad, here it's because nature will bite back. According to J.T. Petty in the behind-the-scenes featurettes, he thought that the horror audience was too intelligent and they needed something kind of different. He looked at the natural world and thought there was a lot of brutality and ugliness in nature. So he made it be like these creatures are part of an ecosystem and they're just kind of doing what they naturally do. Except, then he mixes it with supernatural because he made them be killed by sunlight. I didn't know that, underground creatures like earthworms and moles, if you pulled them out of the ground, they just burst into flames. That would be news to me. Alien, The Thing, and this movie, The Burrowers, all have really dark, bleak endings. But where I respect The Thing and Alien, I don't respect it here. I walk away from the movie going, why'd I watch this film? Why? So why hadn't this film earned the right to have that kind of a bleak ending? Well, first of all, the ending is really abrupt. Just kind of springs on you like the end of The Sopranos or something. It just kind of happens and then, done. Do you see that look of confusion on the main character's face? Yeah, it's pretty much the same look of confusion on the face of audience members who are like, wait, did the film just end? Yeah, I guess it did. Well, that was out of nowhere. Secondly, as I said earlier, you had that disappointing final confrontation, because the Burrowers are just vampires, apparently. Thirdly, there is the problem of it being overly contrived. It sure is convenient that we're all injured, and I think it's a good idea if we split up now, for plot reasons. It sort of closes with the main character realizing it's only just begun. Except that means that this whole movie's like a prelude to a much better movie that would have been more about the creatures. Finally, there is the whole issue that a bunch of stuff happened off screen, and it is suddenly sprung on us, the audience, and on the central protagonist too, in this lame twist ending that just is like a final slap in the face. Definitely a whole slew of problems with that ending. Why did I compare the Burrowers and The Thing and Alien so much? Well, I think it's because I had just seen The Thing, and Alien, well, that's certainly a factor, but I think it's more that they all have the same formula. All three movies have the same formula. So if the three films are so similar, why does the Burrowers fail where Alien and The Thing succeed? The Burrowers' biggest problem is how boring it is. No doubt about that. It has a long, slow build-up to nothing. I hate this movie for that. That is why I was trying to tear it apart in 1,000 different ways. Bringing up historical inaccuracy? What is that? I was just trying to avoid talking about the plot. I went off on that tangent a long while. I brought up Predator. How did that happen? The boring issue feeds into another problem. How contrived this movie feels. I bring that up because I think the writer-director, J.T. Petty, threw in extra gunfights just to make this movie less boring. I think a lot of those fights were pretty contrived. They don't fit into the story well. I think he realized how boring his movie was, and he decided, you know what? Why don't we have a few more gunfights? Why don't we have this happen and this? That way it feels more exciting than it actually is. Now, it sounds like I utterly despise this movie, but that's not really true. I think it's okay. It's better than Friday the 13th, but, a lot of stuff is better than Friday the 13th. On the basic scale, I would give this movie a 4. It's an okay movie, below average, but it's not absolutely terrible. So if it's not absolutely terrible, what are its good qualities, huh? Well, I would say, for one, that it does a genuine Western feel. It's very authentic feeling. It's not like a spaghetti Western or something where everything feels real fake, feels like a bunch of sets. It does feel like you could have gone back in a time machine and this is what the Old West would look like. Gotta give it credit for that. The film makes wonderful use of the great outdoors. It is a truly beautiful landscape in this movie as they travel through it and montages and so forth. The Dakotas were a picturesque landscape, and this movie shows that well. Filmed entirely in New Mexico. Right. Yeah. Well, I guess New Mexico is also rather beautiful in some places, and apparently looks enough like the Dakotas to be used for this film. What else does this film have going for it? Well, the acting is pretty damn good. I just don't like the main protagonist. I don't think the actor's that great for it, and I don't think the character is very well written. But the supporting cast around him is pretty damn good. I have to give this film points for using no CGI. It looks like it's all practical effects. It's people in suits, it's puppetry, it's things like that. And that makes it look a lot more realistic. Maybe that's part of why I was thinking of The Thing and Alien, because those are movies that use practical effects mostly. Its use of practical effects lends itself to my blood and gore scale. The corpses look real. They use blood squibs instead of some CGI program. I mean, if someone's head were to get caved in, which happens, they use a dummy. The only thing that does look super fake is this heart here. I thought it was CGI. It looks so fake. To this movie's credit, it did hide what the creatures looked like for a long time. For much of the film, you just get hints, glimpses, and that did help create some tension in the story, some fear, but it's not really that strong of a feeling. It's more like mild uneasiness. You feel something by the end, kind of anxiety, but it's not strong terror like some of the greater horror flicks. So a film that had a lot of potential ends up being on the mediocre, a below average film, largely held back because of its bad twist ending and how dull it can be. Until next time, this has been J. Matt Wagon with reviews from Purgatory. Yeah! Oh, this, I'm not actually practicing my Western accent anymore. That's me practicing Lando Calrissian celebrating the destruction of the Death Star. It's coming along okay. Yeehaw! See, that's definitely getting better, yeah.